Hi, I'm Akhil.
And I'm Rohan Nahar.
Welcome to the Long Take. It's almost the end of the year, so we're doing our end of the year sort of special again, where we discuss our favorite movies from this year, or at least ones that we were able to watch. Um, yeah, that's basically it. We'll try to go like a little quicker in the beginning because we don't want to bore Rakesh to death and put him to sleep, or her, because we're gender neutral here. So anyway, kicking off with Rohan's number 10. Take it away.
Okay, so my number 10 is 13 Lives. It's the Ron Howard Thai cave rescue movie, which I had zero interest in when I heard that description. But then when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is like an extremely like restrained, humanist, kind of uplifting film. It sustained my interest for it was a really long movie. But then the whole way through, I was kind of gripped, even though I knew how it was going to end. There were some details that were surprising, but I thought it was very nicely underplayed, which was surprising for Ron Howard, who's someone who's so old-fashioned Hollywood workman.
Yeah, this is the guy who like made like Apollo 13 and stuff.
Yeah, which was the comparison
and
that
then
a lot
going
of people
crazy
made.
in space, like, kya ho raha hai?
Yeah, so this was a nice departure for him and very deliberately kind of muted and focused on character, which I really liked.
Yeah, I think that the length is not an issue because it's like a mission-oriented movie, right? Like, so I think that sort of carries you because they're like, oh yeah, abhi ye karna hai, uske baad ye karna hai. Like, there's like a thing, there's always like a thing they're chasing. There's always like a goal they're chasing, how to figure it out. Like, for the longest time, they can't like figure out like, how will we even do it? Like, we're here, we saw them, but like, what now? Had you seen the documentary that came out like the year prior?
I did, yeah. Which had a lot of similar stuff. Yeah. I watched the documentary. But yeah, this is, I mean, compared to the documentary, this is like Forrest Gump. But then, but then as like a piece by itself, I thought, yeah, this and another movie that we're going to discuss probably in 20 minutes. Very similar in terms of just how gripping they are in terms of, just the mission oriented.
Yeah.
Punch the fist in the air type vibe. Yeah. What's your number 10?
My number 10 comes from Ireland. It's called The Quiet Girl. It's a very different film. It's also muted like yours, but it's about a young girl who is basically like in a very dysfunctional family. She's sent away for the summer to her distant relatives where she literally blossoms, sort of comes out of her shell thanks to people who actually pay attention to her. Yeah, like I didn't like, it's like a film I randomly saw, I think like a couple of months back or something, and I wasn't really expecting to like, I was like, yeah, just like a small feature from like some first time director in Ireland, like what could it be? And it's just like, I think packs like an emotional value by the end of it, like especially that final shot, like where she's sort of running and she realizes what she has gotten from these people, and she's like, oh yeah, like which I've never had in my life. That is like, it just won me over by the end. But like before that, it's like almost like a meditation on like grief and like that very heavy subjects, which like they uncover that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean it's very, very quiet. In terms of they don't really speak much in this movie. A lot is communicated just by the pure filmmaking, right? Like in terms of how the scenes are structured, how faces are framed. Like faces, he relies very heavily on in this movie because so much is communicated through them without any dialogue. It's also in Irish, in addition to being an Irish movie, which is a very unusual language. Like you don't really watch movies in Irish, right? It's very unusual. So it's not a language that you can kind of understand the rhythms of as like someone who doesn't understand it or hasn't seen too many movies in that language. Which again, you focus more heavily on the filmmaking of it. And by the end, you're right. Like I thought I was sold like while watching the movie, but when the ending happens, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that you had that in you. I didn't know that you're going to take the story there and just be like unabashedly sentimental, but there you go. And that's what
but it works because like most of the movie has been restrained. Otherwise, it would just be like, "What are you doing? This is fantastic."
No, it's like like literally you can sense the director like nalka kholoing. Like now you are allowed to. So yeah, it's damn good.
Yeah. Right. Moving on. What is your number 9?
My number 9 is Michael Bay's Ambulance, which is not a joke inclusion on my list, because I find it crazy that, you know, in the same year that Top Gun Maverick has been hailed as this great American blockbuster, right? Ambulance is just as skillfully made, if not more, because we talk about like auteur directors, and nobody in the world can do what Michael Bay did in Ambulance. It's like, this is the movie where I go in to every Michael Bay movie expecting this. Like, this is what I expect of him, and this is like him operating at peak level for like 2.5 hours. And everyone's in on the joke, you know, nobody's taking themselves seriously in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, everything is ridiculous, but like...
Yeah, like it's deliberately over the top every moment of this movie.
Yeah. And then, you know, we spoke about how those pointless like Dwayne Johnson movies, how they have no like idea how to use drones. But this guy knows how to use drones, right? He's pushing the bar for himself. He knows like his
although like they got too much for me eventually. I was just like, this movie is sometimes like a visual assault on my senses.
Yeah. It's supposed to be an assault, right? Everyone's yelling. Nobody speaks.
Yeah. This is the opposite of the two movies you've just discussed in terms of sensibility.
Like in every way possible. This is like this is louder than RRR. Imagine. So yeah, like just people kind of responded to Elvis for similar reasons, because they were like, oh, this is so huge and everything is so loud. But I'm like, no, Elvis doesn't understand storytelling, right? It's just scene after scene of like Wikipedia article entries. But this one is like unabashed sentimentality that Michael Bay does so well. You know, that like slow-mo Terrence Malick thing, and then just sparky like explosions.
Yeah, and like cameras like spinning around characters. Obviously,
this is what I enjoy, and I think like I'm at that age where I'm not gonna like kind of pretend that I don't. What's your number?
Right. My number 9 does not
have any explosions.
Buck to this trend. Yeah, it's sticking to the trend we established prior to this movie. It's called Happening. It's a small movie from France about a teenager who is one night stand, and then she gets pregnant, and she's like living in 1963, which I didn't mention until now, forgot. And because of that, she's
it doesn't
like,
matter, because it could be any time, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it could be any time. I mean, there's so many countries today which like even if the access is easily available, like the way society looks at you, which is like what happens in this movie as well, right? Like it's just everyone around her is just like, they don't even know, like the word never comes up. The word I just mentioned, abortion, never comes up in the entire movie, because saying that is too much, let alone having, you know, talking about like giving access to that for women.
Yeah. And this is France, right? Almost in a way feels like this movie was made in Iran secretly.
Yeah.
Because of how the
everyone's tiptoeing around everything. Yeah. And it's just like, this is, and I saw this before, like, you know, things got worse in the US and like stuff like in South America and stuff. So like that movie's been hitting harder for a lot of people after who've seen that. But like, I feel like these kind of movies are just like forever, right? Like this is what our world is. Society's always been stacked against women. We do not make it easy for them. And when they get into terrible situations, when they get into corners, they just like, screw you, live with this now. And it's just like, again, like the two of them discussed, like 13 Lives and Quiet Girl, it's very restrained, you know, it doesn't like, I think the woman, even though like she's not a woman, she's a teenager, even though she's going through such insane things, like the camera's like on her face the entire time, like, to this movie, it's like so claustrophobic to be with her. But like there's never a scene where like they give into the melodrama, right? There's never a scene where she just like breaks down and cries for like 3 minutes.
Yeah, because she can't, right? Because she has no support. Like she's literally alone. It's like, it reminded me of that movie Son of Saul. I don't know if you remember. Right? You're just strapped to the protagonist in 4:3 ratio for however long it's going to take them to survive. And don't know.
That's basically what it is. Like this is like a survival movie in some way, right? She has to figure a way out. She wants her like examination or whatever studies to like stay on track. Otherwise her family or her friends are like, no one really cares what's happening.
It's should be said, it's not easy to watch. Like at several times I was like, mujhe nahi dekhna. But then
there was like, especially that scene where she God, like, just thinking about it making me like all my hairs are standing up right now. But like when she goes into her vagina with those what are they, scissors? I'm forgetting now. Saw this a
It's
long
like
time
a
back.
metal thingy.
Metal whatever thing. Yeah, it's just like literally I think I paused the movie. I'm not remember now because I saw it like a while back. But I was like, I cannot take this.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to watch, but then it is very important to watch, and I think everyone should.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. What is your number 8?
My number 8 is a horror movie kind of a horror movie called Speak No Evil, which I watched a while ago, and I think, yeah, it's the only horror movie on my list. And yeah, it's partially horror, it's partially like a comedy of
Although
manners.
I would say the next movie coming up with you is sort of horror, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. So this is like about I think a Danish couple who run into a Dutch couple on a vacation. Dutch couple invites them over
Italy,
to spend some time with them in their house. They go there, they realize that the Dutch couple is weird. And it begins as
this is like obnoxious, right? It's like the kind of people you meet, like, they're just like loud and they don't really have manners and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it begins as this really uncomfortable, now we're stuck here, what do we do? And it's also about like how culture plays into like social situations. They feel like they're going to be too rude to kind of just be like, hum ja rahe hain. And the longer they stay, the weirder things get, and by the end it's like pure horror.
It's almost like that, right? It's like how like our politeness gets in the way of basically our lives sometimes. Like it's almost like you try to like excuse yourself. You're like, hey, this is okay.
Yeah.
And suddenly you find yourself in a country with Modi, right?
Getting stoned to death in a quarry.
Like that's why I think this movie like can be like allegorical in like any number of ways, right? Like it doesn't have to be about just like people being polite to other people. It's just like you can stretch it to any dimension.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing about the movie is the subversion, right? So it like holds its hand out to you and it's like, haath milao because you're nice. We understand you're a nice person. But then in the end, it's like, sorry, it's not going to end well for you. It's like so completely nihilistic, which I really like. Like the tonal shift at the end is like really crazy.
Yeah, like in the end, it's like they just like go with it. They're like, now we're just gonna like show you everything you've been dreading for the last 80 minutes.
Speaking of tonal shifts, what's your number 8?
So yeah, like everyone, I don't think everyone knows it, but like this guy who's made Old Boy and The Handmaiden, very like graphic movies with like blood and sex and everything, has now made a movie called Decision to Leave, which has like the basics like sort of understanding, but like then removed much of like his sort of the things he's known for. So it doesn't feel like a Park Chan-wook movie when you come into it. But you can tell like he's operating in the same space. It's like I call it the best romantic movie of 2022. Like even though like primarily it's something else, but like that's what it actually is. It's a romantic movie. It's about a detective like who's trying to like apprehend this woman, but he just falls for her. And it's just like the turns it takes. It's again like a glance movie. Like we're talking about the Quiet Girl ka camera work. Like this is again the same thing. It's almost like so much is conveyed through like them just like looking at each other and the camera work and the production design or stuff like that in the way they room in, the places they meet in. It had me hooked completely.
I mean, so for me, Decision to Leave did not work, and I'm going into it as a big Park Chan-wook fan, and this is not because. This is a departure for him as a director. I think it's very much in his wheelhouse, the themes that he's dealing with, like just psychosexual yearning, like turned out to 11. That's something he's done before.
I think it was a departure in like the visual depiction of it.
So with Decision to Leave, what I can do is I can admire the technical achievements, and it is quite amazing to look at, like to just wonder how he achieved some of the shots, and some of the camera work is insane, and it will take like 20 viewings to kind of appreciate all of it. But then for me, a romantic movie has to make me feel, and this did not make me feel anything. Even like Vertigo, which this movie is kind of riffing on, made me feel something.
It has like a very Hitchcockian
but this riff. For a romantic movie, and this is a romantic movie, you are right, but then on that account it's a failure because I felt nothing for these two people, which is sad.
Which I guess like sort of brings us to your number 7, where we discussed that in depth on our episode, where I did not like connect with. So what is it?
It's Blonde, which is one of the most divisive ones this year. The Marilyn Monroe biopic, quote unquote, which is a made-up horror movie.
Quote unquote. It's like basically like Amadeus, but like in today's era, right?
Yeah, it's like, I appreciate wild swings, and this is a wild swing if there ever was one. From minute one to like whatever 3 hours for however long it is, it's just
it's long.
It's intense. It's difficult to watch. It's not holding back. It wants you to feel everything it wants you to feel, and I think it does a really good job.
Yeah. It's like just like happening. I think the camera is like on her face like the entire movie.
Yeah, and I think it does a really good job in achieving what it set out to do, which is a simple benchmark that I set for every movie that I watch. Like, I might not agree with what the movie is aiming for, but if the movie itself achieves it, then, thumbs up. In this case, I found myself agreeing with whatever the movie was saying, like, world's difficult, people enjoy watching others suffer, and here you go, you're the culprit.
Yeah, I've already like voiced my thoughts like in a much longer form. So instead of like wasting time again here, you just go to our episode blog and check that one out.
Yep. What's your number 7?
My number 7, I think, is also your number 6, if I'm getting it correct here. It's called Tar. It's the movie that I think a lot of people are actually putting number 1 on their list. And it's like supposed to be an Oscar frontrunner, but I wasn't like that out of it. But also like did not leave me once it like got me hooked. Like it's just, that's obviously thanks to like Kate Blanchett. She's amazing in I think almost everything she does. And yeah, it's almost thanks to her power that you just like you're put into the world. Like I mean when I went in, I was like, you sort of like get those expectations, right? If you like watched it after all those like sort of praises have been sung, you're like, yeah, okay, like now I'm expecting this to be like Dark Knight now. So obviously like it's not gonna be like that ever. But it's almost like one of the most involving movies. I think what it does well is that it never like sort of like talks down or like never teaches like or never voices like where it stands on its character. It's like, yeah, this is the character. Until the end, which like there are debates over it whether that those scenes are even like happening for real or not. There are theories out there which like I have no idea.
Okay.
Anyway, so until that point, yeah, but like it's the fall from grace is just amazing to watch for any like movie, right? That's why these movies work, is because you like people like falling from the top. I guess everyone like just likes that,
especially someone like,
and it's depicted
this person.
Yeah, this person, like, who just, like, who uses everyone around her, is horrible to everyone, like, and, like, grants, like, like, favors and, like, stuff like that person will, like, perform for me now because, like, I like her face or whatever. And goes up to, like, schoolyard bullies and then becomes the bully herself. Like, just, like, yeah, just horrible behavior, like, all around.
Yeah, what I really appreciate about this movie is how like you said, it doesn't really spoon feed like it expects you to be intelligent enough to follow along and draw your own conclusions, and it's complex. It's not easy. Like characters are real characters. They're like real people. They're not easily like slotted into boxes for your convenience, which a lot of movies tend to do, because it's the easiest way to go about things. So for the longest time,
this character bad, this character good.
So for the longest time, you don't know what to feel about this person, right? You're watching this person be like literally people doing puja of this person, and you're like, acha, theek hai.
Yeah, that's how the movie starts. They're like, this person is at top of the world. There's no one better than her in her craft.
And I understand people who might watch this and be like, we don't really agree with the perspective of this movie, but then I do believe that if you stick with it, especially that ending, the movie makes it very clear where it stands. Even though it tells most of the movie is told via her perspective, which might be weird, but then that also makes it more complex and more interesting. And she's obviously like operating on God level. Just the opening interview scene itself, I was like, how is she doing this? I'm not a Kate Blanchett fan, and while watching this, I was like, ye kaise kar rahi hai? I cannot believe how she's doing it. And by the end, I was like, oh man, this is like a major movie.
All right, so we've covered your 6th as well, so I guess it's back to me then.
It is back to you. What's your number 6?
My number 6 is probably the longest title on this, I think. if I'm getting it right. Yeah, it's called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I don't know what way to start with this movie. Like, I feel like whatever I sort of say, I'm not going to be ever encapsulate what I felt while watching it. Like, I mean, I can talk about, like the maddening, crazy stuff they do with like dildo fights and like people putting things up their butts or like hot dog fingers and stuff like that. But like that doesn't really tell you anything about the movie. Or I can talk about, like how the movie pays homages to like everything from In the Mood for Love to like Space Odyssey and like The Matrix in some ways. But like even that doesn't tell you anything about the movie. Or I can say like the movie is about laundromat owners who are behind on their taxes and they're going through stuff, but like even that doesn't say anything about the movie. So I really don't know like what to say except the fact that this is the craziest, I guess, zaniest invention in this sort of year at least. And the word multiverse has been thrown around a lot, especially in the last couple of years by like both all the superhero giants. But this movie knows exactly what to do with the multiverse storytelling. And basically, I think no one should do it after this.
Yeah. I enjoyed Everything Everywhere All at Once. I did not love it. And I think part of the reason behind that is I enjoyed portions of it. I connected, as I would expect, with the love story between the laundromat owners, Michelle Yeoh and her husband. I connected with the In the Mood for Love kind of sequences. I connected with the mother-daughter narrative, which is the core of the movie. What I did not connect with was the glossy kind of superficiality of it, which I understand is part of the experience, but then it kind of took me out of it, which is the only reason why I'm holding back on this movie more than, most people, obviously.
Right.
So that's where I am.
Cool. Jumping to your number 5, which I think is also my number 5.
All right, cool. So, and this is a movie that we've done on the podcast. So a longer conversation can be checked out. It's Top Gun Maverick. Like easily the best theater experience for me this year on IMAX. Not knowing really, because I watched Top Gun and everyone's watched Top Gun and they're like, yeah, fun movie, whatever. But this one kind of takes it to another level. Just the purity of storytelling, the purity of just how...
Yeah, I had like much different expectations. I was like, Top Gun for me is like meh, So I was like going into that, I was like, this is going to be like 36 years later, they're going to make another meh movie and no one's going to care. And I went in and I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is insane. It's like Mission Impossible in planes now.
Which is exactly what... So now he's just like stuck, right? Every movie has to be like some insane kind of Mission Impossible level achievement.
But then the guy actually knows how to like up the ante, right? It's not like he's just like falls down after a point. It's not like he's reached his peak and he's like, I can never do better with that stunt, so let's just check out. No, like he's so committed to just like making sure that everything like actually like be like, oh yeah, okay, that was amazing.
Which was my theory about this movie, right? This movie is about Tom Cruise and how he has to up the ante every time. So even in this movie, when the mission is complete, he's like, no, there's more to be done. He just levels up suddenly. And that's what makes, Tom Cruise movies and this movie so fun to watch. Yeah,
go check out our episode now. Thank you.
Should we move on to number 4 then?
Yep. What is your number 4?
My number 4 is an action movie that I ranked just above Maverick this year. It's Athena. I'm kind of shocked that not more people kind of caught on to it. Maybe that's because just Netflix mein bury ho gaya like so many other movies. But yeah, it's like this crazy biblical fable set in a Paris...
banlieue, I think.
Yeah, a banlieue, like a housing complex, where like an uprising happens because a child is killed by the police, and the movie is kind of a collection of these elaborately staged long action sequences with deliberately thinly written characters who serve as archetypes, and it's angry and it's furious, and by the end you're like, I don't know if you're going to start a riot in real life. But then I appreciate just the passion of this movie.
Yeah, so I think I don't know why other people haven't caught on to it, but like for me, I think the movie peaked in its like first 10 whatever 15 minutes the long the sequence is. I was like, this is amazing. I don't know how they're gonna top this anymore for the next 70 minutes. And then I was like, oh, they actually don't top it. Because like, I mean, yeah, the thin characters, like, they're actually like quite thin, and that doesn't work. The social political like commentary itself is like quite, which also like quite blunt, which I guess is natural because you're making like a B movie. You're not trying to like make like a character sort of based drama. But yeah, like I think I will remember this movie for the first 15 minutes, and after that I'll be like, yeah, okay, that was okay. But like first 15 minutes, very, very good.
Yeah, so Athena for me was like a big screen movie that was just sadly on Netflix. You know, I can't imagine how much better I would have liked it if I'd seen it on like a actual screen with like people who got riled up as they were watching it. That would have been a really cool experience. But then I'd imagine that the reason I felt so strongly about it, even though I watched it on like a laptop or whatever, is because it's so like powerful in what it wants to do, right? And again, like when a movie achieves what it wants to achieve is when I appreciate it. And this movie was very clear about what it wanted to do. It was very clear about its politics, very clear about how it wanted to convey its anger. It was very clear about, you know, the technical things it wanted to achieve. It felt like a music video. All that's very cool. So yeah, really, 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 really strong movie for me.
Right.
What is your number 4?
I think my number 4 is the only documentary in our list, if I'm getting it right. It's called Navalny. It's named after the guy who's currently sitting in jail thanks to Putin. I think I saw this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I obviously saw this. Like, the war has been going on. Like, not war, invasion has been going on. Like, pretty much all entire year, I think now. And it's just like become a more important movie now. And it was already very important before because this is basically like he's like the only sort of like recognizable critic, right? Like, I mean, there are obviously a lot of people who don't want Putin to be present in US, sure, but this is the guy who's sort of like the face of it and like bold enough to like take on him like publicly and everywhere. It follows him like, and what I love about it, like it's not just like a movie about like, this is the guy who's in jail and we're like talking about him as like a Wikipedia article. It's like it's also like a funny movie at sometimes, right? Because it's like it's looking at his life between the time he got poisoned, which most like we don't really need proof it to basically happened with like Putin's like approval, to his like rejailing where he returns to his country. And between that time, he's trying to figure out like who were the people involved, right? Like who like actually like poisoned him or attempted to assassinate him, basically. And during that investigation, like the things he comes up with, especially like that one amazing call, which is like on camera, is this insane. That's probably like the funniest moment, like the most bonkers, and still somewhat at the same time the most harrowing moment of like how just like banal evil can be. Or sometimes how stupid it can be, but also how far-reaching it can be when it has the right resources and the right like hand behind it. Yeah, and this is a guy who's sort of almost like the Gandhi of Russia today, but like then merged with an entertainer, right? Because he like he leverages like TikTok trends and then makes videos around it to like convey very important information in like in an enjoyable fashion. Yeah, like I loved the movie from like every possible way.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't call him Gandhi. I'd call him more like an influencer sort, And yeah, the scene that you were talking about, pound for pound, like it was probably the most insane sequence in any movie this year. That phone call thing, because it's so. On the surface, it's shocking because people are discussing assassinations, but then what really stood out for me was like Navalny's reaction himself. Like in a moment, it's like an out of body experience for him, right? It's like he's talking about someone else, not himself, which is what was so cool about. Like he is so lost in that investigation or whatever it is. He's so lost.
He forgets that he was the target.
Yeah.
Of like a murder. Almost.
Yeah, it's almost like he's like it's like an achievement for him. Like, look what I can do. Like that's. And which was what made him such a fascinating character also. Like a really, really complicated subject for a documentary.
Yeah, I think what makes him fascinating as well is that, like, so there's so many critics of like repressive regimes who like, just stay outside forever, right? They just live in Western Europe or like the US, and they like criticize from there. But this guy, like, I almost like felt like he was like defining patriotism almost. Like he was like, yeah, I mean, there's like one thing to stand here and like keep criticizing Putin and here, but he was like, no, I'm gonna go back to my country. I don't care what happens to me. Which like most likely, it's not gonna be very well. He's already like in I think 9-year prison term or something after the documentary's events, and possibly he's gonna stay there like all his life as long as Putin is in power. So in that sense, like that's almost like a brave but also like a foolish decision, because like how much does he think he can do if he's just gonna sit behind like prison bars the rest of his life?
He is someone who is so like committed to the cause that he is okay with becoming the martyr at this point, right? He wants to be the symbol for whatever rebellion that he has started. He isn't so much concerned anymore about surviving it and leading it himself, which is what I find so fascinating about this person. Like, he seemed like someone who was an opportunist early in his career, which the movie kind of touches on. Someone who just wanted to oppose for the sake of opposition. But then he's also open to kind of his ideologies are flexible. Like, as long as I win and as long as I get the support that I want, I'm okay with kind of siding with whoever will give me that support, which is what's fascinating, right? And by this point, he's so far down this path that he's kind of lost any sense of, what is the end goal here? How long will this fight continue? Does it even matter if I live or die? Which is fascinating to me. Probably deserves 15 more documentaries about him.
Yeah. Okay then. Moving on to your number 3.
Moving on to my number 3. This is a real romantic movie now. In fact, my number 3 and number 2 are romantic movies. This one we've spoken about on the podcast. It's Cha Cha Real Smooth. Another movie that I kind of anticipated would be a more, important kind of awards player, but I
wonder if like the early release sort of
that kind of impacted that. Which is my theory about 13 Lives as well. It is like poorly timed release, especially in a streaming era. Movies come and go on a week-to-week basis. People forget. Cha Cha Real Smooth. Although maybe Apple was trying to follow the Coda thing, because Coda was also released early-ish, right?
Yeah, it was like the same thing format which we discussed, right? With Cha Cha Real Smooth, we were like, they trying to copy that playbook, but it doesn't seem to have worked for them.
Yeah, so I mean, this one should have been a shoe-in for like supporting actress. What a great character Dakota Johnson played in this movie, and just so sad at the end, but yet like so uplifting. It was so the relationship that the two central characters in this movie, the director who's like 25 years old, he's playing the protagonist as well, had with Dakota Johnson's character was just so moving.
Yeah, we spoke about this in detail. So like everything, as you were talking about this movie right now, I was thinking of the scenes again. Like we spoke about, the stuff, like especially that very nice scene where they sort of like return from like some party or something.
The elbow scene.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Just like that's what if the movie sort of like that kind of scene lives in your head, like what was 6-7 months on, I think now. That sort of shows like a power of a movie, right?
Yeah, at par with the laundry and taxes scene from Everything Everywhere, I feel, which I think I might have brought up while we were speaking about this movie also. What's your number 3 then?
My number 3 is actually comes from Ireland again, which makes it the second Irish movie on my list. It's called The Banshees of Inisherin. It's on the surface, it's a movie about two friends falling out because one guy just doesn't like the other guy anymore because he finds him dull and boring. But really, it's a movie about like civil war. It's like people just like sort of self-sabotaging each other and like it's just too proudful or too stubborn or just too stupid, or as the famous dialogue from this movie, the woman says, "You're just all fucking boring." This is what it comes down to, is that like war is stupid and that we just need to like grow up and
men
be
need
better,
to grow
but
up,
that's why I said we, like men just as a whole need to grow up. Otherwise, like imagine how different mankind's history could have been if just like men had grown up earlier.
And he just thought less of, like, in this movie, Brendan Gleeson's character has suddenly convinced himself that he's important. There's no evidence, right? And then one day he's like, "Nay, I deserve better." And it's
Yeah.
also a movie about, just the arrogance that comes with creating art, however
And
unimportant.
the arrogance, and that's what that's the funny like core there, right? He's like, he's decided that art is very important to him. He must make art until his death. He has to leave something valuable behind, and at the same time, he's like sacrificing that very thing. He's like, if you come near me, I will sacrifice the very thing that is important for me for my art. So like, that's what it's conveying about the stupidity of war, right? It's almost like you're saying that, oh yeah, like my land or my like country is important to me, but you kill your own people when you go to war.
Yeah.
It's always women and children who die the most when you go to war. It's never like, oh yeah, we killed more of them.
Yeah. And it's also what you're willing to turn your back on, right? Because Colin Farrell's character, and what a crazy year Colin Farrell's been having,
Yeah.
Colin Farrell's character in this movie represents, I mean, in the eyes of Brendan Gleeson, he represents stupidity. But you and I know, having seen the movie and what the movie is saying, that he represents kindness, right? He represents the alternative. Yeah. He represents peace.
Which, like he says in dialogue, like a movie doesn't even try to play it like coy or anything. He literally in one scene, he's like, I am the nice guy. I've always been nice.
Yeah, and it's fine. You don't need to do anything else, because that's where we are as society, right? If you're nice, that's more than anyone else can offer you.
Yeah, that's better than 99.9% that are offering right now.
That being said, it is like Martin McDonagh, so it is like really, really bleak and bleakly funny. Not in the same way as in Bruges, but feels like a companion piece, which came out like more than a decade ago at this point. Or even like his last movie, which felt more urgent and angrier, right? Which
that was much more angrier. I think this is works more as a comedy, like especially like the play of the dialogues, like the way alliterative nature of like like saying the same line over and over again, like stuff like that, or even having like buffoons around, like how the Barry Keoghan, the character he plays, like stuff like that. Like it is first and foremost wants to make you laugh, but then leave you at the end being like, okay, are you thinking now? Like, or are you and sort of leave you with that message and not just try to force that message down.
Especially the ending, right, which is kind of ambiguous, because you've been building up towards this clash, and there is like it is a violent clash. There is violence in it, a self-inflicted violence, which is also like a war allegory, right? Because you are harming yourself. But then in the end, it's like, what, like, is this a stalemate? Will the war continue tomorrow? Is it just like a ceasefire?
Yeah, but I think that it benefits from the fact that it knows more than its characters, right? Like because it knows everything that's going to happen to Ireland beyond for like so many years and almost half like a century. I think it's almost commentating on that in a way that they will be stupid enough to come back to blows again.
Yeah, and it works as it's if I'm not wrong, Martin McDonagh is not Irish, even though he spent like a career making Irish-centric stuff.
And he's got like the two best Irish actors probably currently in business.
One of them is probably in the form of his career this year. It's insane. So this is a great movie, Banshees.
Right, moving on then. What is your runner-up?
My runner-up is musical. This is the only musical that we have this year on the list.
Yeah, I guess like this. It is the only out-and-out musical.
Yeah, it's Cyrano, which is adaptation of the play, which itself is like an adaptation of something else, which has been adapted like a million times before. But it's, if Cha-Cha was a romantic movie, like this is a romantic movie. Like this is
this is almost Bollywood level romance.
Yeah, this is like earnest musical romance, old-fashioned. And I've noticed like a lot of these movies on my list are just like very, very pure, like in terms of genre. Like they don't really play coy with what they're trying to do. And this one isn't like winking at the audience. This one wants to tug at your heartstrings. This one has that La La Land ending. And which is what I appreciated about it. It's about a guy who falls in love.
Yeah, which I think like you mentioned now that you mentioned La La Land, like I think what didn't work for me with this one was that it doesn't have those, like its songs don't have that power for me. Right? Like with La La Land, what happened to me was like literally I feel like I left the theater and in the car I was like, okay, can we like play the soundtrack now? Thank you.
I think the La La Land soundtrack was more bombastic, although the music here, which is by members of the National, by definition is more muted. Although there are a couple of really, really moving ballads. Like I found myself really returning to the music of this movie.
Right.
But then...
Yeah, I think it was not more the music, but I think it was also like the lyrics for me. It was like they're not, I don't know, they wouldn't like evocative enough, or maybe like not pulling me enough to be like, oh yeah, like I want to like hear them again.
Do you think that's because
but yeah, on the whole,
he isn't like Peter Dinklage is the main guy. He isn't like a singer because he is required to do a lot of singing.
But like that was also the case in like La La Land, right? Like they had to do so much singing themselves. So I don't think that's the barrier. So I think when I always prefer it when like actors are given the job rather than feeling fake, because like you can tell, right? Like because they're in the dialogues, they like sound themselves, and the minute they start singing, you can tell like someone else is singing for them. So I always prefer that you give it to the actor, even though if they're not like trained, even if their voices break, I would rather have the authenticity over the well sounding of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind the singing, even though he's just singing. He's not dancing or doing anything like that. It's a sadder movie in many ways.
Yeah, it is obviously a much sadder movie. Yeah.
And yeah, the ending is hard. Like there is it's not happy, and the tragic quality of it is what kind of really stuck with me through all these months. I saw it months and months ago. Yeah, number 2 still, despite like hundreds of movies watched this year, which is really, really cool. I think more people should watch this. But funny enough, like my number 2 did not really work for you, and your number 2 did not really work for me. Tell Rakesh what it is.
Yeah, so this is I think the only movie on this list from Iran. It's made by the son of a legendary director, almost. I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, legendary worldwide, world-renowned legend.
Yeah. So Ska Beta is his first feature, which is a movie. In a way, this is, I mean, for me, it's like a companion piece to Navalny.
It's also a companion piece to Banshees of Inisherin, by the way.
Yeah, it could be seen as that as well. But yeah, for me, but more of like I was thought as Navalny because it's always like it's set in a repressive regime. It doesn't like tell you that at any point, at least like until like deep into the movie, like you got to get that sense. It's just like initially it's just a road movie, just like eccentric family and like people are bickering with each other all the time. Everyone's on edge for some reason except the small kid who like is having the time of his life. And yeah, like it's slowly like you realize what it's actually like trying to hint at or talk about. And I think by the time like the movie like reached, by the time they bury the dog, spoiler alert, and like they're driving away and then they're sort of dancing almost in the car to that like sort of pop song, whatever, and I was like I think crying with them, everyone. That's probably like that loud mouthed sort of like climactic end to the movie. It was like I was like I think sold by then, but I guess it didn't work for you said.
Yeah, I do think that I was kind of struggling to connect with these characters because of how kind of ambiguously written they were. Not so much the story, like I was in for the ride, like I wanted to know what was happening, I wanted to know where they were going, what the point of it all was. But then I do sense that I would have appreciated it more if I knew more going in.
Right.
Like I would have appreciated what the cyclist stands for. I would have appreciated what the random people that they run into stand for. I would have appreciated what the dog represents, because they all represent things. They all represent a part of Iranian culture that is kind of influencing how people live these days. The journey itself has meaning, but then all of it is too much to kind of absorb right at the end when you understand what it's all about. Yeah, which is why I kind of thought it was like Banshees of Inisherin, right? Although in Banshees it tells you very early on that the civil war is happening across the sea. So you know in back of your mind that this is what the movie is about. Here I was like, oh, it's like Waiting for Godot, which is also why I made that connection. But then even in Waiting for Godot, you know very early on what they're waiting for, right? So yeah, that was just a struggle. Like I didn't really connect with it emotionally, I suppose.
Yeah, I think like that almost like comes from, I think what his father sometimes does is like he's not like, I think that's almost like Iranian cinema in general as well, is that
But
when
his
they
father
don't
is
want you to.
capable of, of like hitting the core emotion of every scene with like very, very
Yeah,
simple.
because he's like a much more experienced filmmaker as well. Yeah.
Just the tilt of a camera and you're like, oh my god, destroyed, like that level. But
yeah,
I guess,
so like in this movie as well, like I mean, one of the scenes that still sort of like holds with me is like this, like they've kept you in the car for the longest time, right? You just like almost like you become part of the family for like the longest time, and then when that biggest scene comes where they're actually supposed to reveal what's happening, is that this child is being sent away. He just like pulls away. It's like just like super wide shot, and it's like running back and forth from like one tree to like the bike, and the bike to the back to the car, and it's just full chaos is happening because like everyone's emotions are now coming out because the family's actually getting separated. And I just thought like that like sort of decision sort of like really worked for me. I was like, okay, like I understand why you want to pull back at this moment.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, to be clear, like there is clear talent here, like more like authorship than most movies that we'd see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm obviously interested to watch more, obviously.
Yeah, I was surprised, I was like, when I like first read about it, I was like, oh, maybe it's like a Jafar, but I was like, wait, Pana, ye kaun hai? And like, once you've seen it, you're like, yeah, okay, this is like a very good debut feature. Speaking of debut features,
both are number one.
We have the same number one, which is, I think, for the first time it's happened in 3 years, I think.
We are sharing number one. Although I would want to like quickly just point out, there is a companion piece movie to this one that is not on my list. But then in the days since I've seen it, it has been sticking, like it refuses to go away. And I have a suspicion that if we were to record this anytime in the future, maybe a week or 10 days or a month or whatever, it would very easily be number one. Like The Fabelmans is the movie I'm talking about. And it's not in my top 10 as we speak in this moment.
So my favorite, I think it was like in my like, if we had like a 12 or an 11, I think I would have crept in. But like, I don't know, like how you like didn't connect with like Hit the Road. Like that happened to me with The Fabelmans. Like I was like the craft of it, and like I could journey of it, I could admire. But like for some reason I was never like really like pulled into it.
It's just one of those movies that when I watched it for the first time, I had a similar reaction to what you're describing right now. Is like, I understand the craft is crazy. Maybe I'm not connecting to it in the way that he wanted to, but in the days since I've seen it, I just refuse to go away. And every day I'm like, and I haven't seen it again, but every day one scene pops in my head and I'm like, oh.
I think that's After Sun for me, which like we haven't mentioned, so like I just mentioned now. That's our number one. Like that's like After Sun, just like there are every time like I just think about like the movies this year, like I'm thinking about like videotape scenes from this movie.
Which is funny, right? Because this is, as you mentioned, a debut feature about a person recalling, the formative kind of years in their life with their parent, right? Which is what Spielberg has done 5 decades into his career. And this person has done it the...
And so many people, right? Like this year, not just The Fabelmans, we also had like Bardo from Inaritu. We had Armageddon Time from James Gray, and we had the Empire of Light from Sam Mendes. And this is some 30-something Scottish director like making her first feature, and she's made this.
Yeah, it's insane. This is the movie where I'm like, Paul Mescal star. Like, star.
Paul Mescal star, and like how do you get the kid to act so mature?
The kid is like a toss-up for me, like child performances in movies, right? You either get it or you don't, and it's like it can't be trained. Right. Like I don't think directors or most directors have that skill where they can train an actor, a child actor, to do what they want. It's either the child gets it and you cast right. It's more of a casting thing than like a direction thing, I feel. And this one, obviously, they found the kid right. Belfast was last year, right? And that kid was kind of annoying in a similarly kind of semi-autobiographical story about
I mean, Belfast, the movie was to be fair, annoying for me. It just felt,
fake.
fake.
And this one is like every moment, even though you haven't lived it, it makes you feel as if it's your memory. Even though you might not have...
Just every moment is coming to life, like in the biggest form possible.
And just those quiet scenes of her, the lens of the director, just observing Paul Mescal's character, like from a distance, you know, with his back turned to us.
Yeah, which is what I like, right? Like, it's not the movie because, like, she's remembering, like, you know, we're given the perspective through the film, not like told early on, because she's remembering and like sifting through sort of like videotapes. What I like is that it's never becomes like, oh yeah, like now that we have the knowledge of putting you in the past, we'll show you what like the father is feeling. No, that would be a lie, right? Because then that would be like going into areas you necessarily cannot go because the daughter did not have access to that sort of knowledge or that memory. So I think that's what I appreciate is that they sort of like they keep that, like, I loved movies when they sort of, you know, like she's not hiding anything, because in a way she doesn't know, right? Because it's this semi-autographed boyfriend or whatever. But like by keeping that distance, it's almost like an invitation to you and be like, okay, what do you think he was going through? And I feel like everyone who comes to this movie will sort of imprint something else, right? Maybe from their own dad, or maybe from their uncle, or maybe from their new, and they'll be like, okay, maybe that's what he was going.
I mean, you do get a sense of what was happening, right? This person was...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are
clearly troubled,
answers
and
there.
As a child, she did not understand the extent of the trouble, and the whole movie is framed from the perspective of, you know, hindsight mein kaisa hota hai. Like, and she's not trying to like sugarcoat the memories. She is trying to present them as she remembers them. But then those memories have taken on a new shape because she's an adult now, and she's viewing them as, you know, there is like a tinge of melancholy even in the happiest moments. There is no outburst or anything angry or anything, you know, but you get the sense that this person is...
And tinge of melancholy is especially evident towards the end, right? Like where it sort of really hits you and they're like, wait, maybe this was the final time they saw each other.
Yeah, like... And you anticipate the worst. I don't think anyone's going to go out of this movie thinking, wow, maybe they just like didn't speak to each other. Yeah, like something drastic must have happened. Yeah.
No, like that has happened. Yeah, exactly. Because then you start thinking about those lines again, where he says, you know, like to that random fisherman, like that stuff like line when he was like, yeah, like I just turned 30, like, and I don't think I'll make it to 40. And you just like, wait, like, did he mean the word? Like, did he actually mean he would like potential of taking his life?
I mean, exactly, right? I mean, this so spare of this movie. There's so little, again, like The Quiet Girl, like so little dialogue, but so much communicated, like silent glances, the camera moves, how the frames are composed, and I'm assuming that every line that was included in this movie, there's a reason behind that line, right? It's meant to...
Yeah, there was like things I didn't pick up on initially, which like I was reading about it, and then like someone mentioned like I want to watch it again now just to make sure. Is that apparently like Paul Mescal's character is never in the light or something. He's always in the shade or shadow. Like, and then that takes on a psychological layer, right? Like then you're conveying something through that if people pick up on that.
Yeah. So kind of an insane debut. Like logo mein itna talent hai, it's kind of astonishing to me.
Yeah, it's just like come out, they make a couple of short films and then they make this. Like,
I mean, and not in terms of just like the form of it, right? Because as a movie, as like a technical achievement, it's crazy. It's like a movie, right? But just in terms of the emotional maturity of it coming from someone who's in their 30s, early 30s, right? You wouldn't normally expect that. Like you wouldn't normally expect someone to have such an emotionally mature like outlook towards such serious things. Especially if you could like look around you and kind of observe what people our age are like doing in life.
Going to nightclubs.
Whatever. I mean, you can go to a nightclub, right? But then it doesn't matter if you're like an actively like you're an emotionally intelligent person who's nice to people, you know, you're understanding this, that. It's fine. But then I see people that are really stupid and they don't really know they're stupid. And it's just like a reminder that, you know, there are so many different kinds of people in this world. Maybe we need to kind of experience more things and not be kind of restricted to our own kind of tiny bubbles that we live in.
Yeah, which like I was just like looking at our list as well. It's like, and that's what I find, right? When I talk to like a lot of people, there's like and it's the barrier again, right? I mean, so many of our movies are in English, sure, but like even then, like people don't even venture out into like English movies from like other countries. Forget like venturing into non-English movies from other countries, and it's just like
This
they're
is like
leaving
a
so much
huge
on the
like,
table
yeah.
every year. Like you speak to like most people, and their movies like will come from like their local culture, and it's not just for India.
And the tragedy is that you will watch a movie in French, right? But then you're understanding only 60% of it, is my theory with every foreign language movie. Like when you watch a movie in a foreign language that you don't understand the nuances of,
yeah,
it's like watching a dub, basically, right? And we know that if you watch a dub, it takes away so much of the experience.
Yeah.
So imagine how much is there on the table that you're not experiencing to its fullest. Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. It's also like a fool's errand. Like this is not something that you can conquer ever, so it's pointless thinking about it.
I was also looking at this was like so little of our like list is also like sometimes available just like to watch in India, even though like streaming services keep growing and growing as we're being told every year.
Which is the lie that streaming services have told us.
Yeah,
in fact, it's more difficult.
It's exactly like it's just. I mean, some of our movies are actually like was first released like in film festivals like the previous year, 2021, and they still haven't made it to like any platform in India, right? And it's just like out of like all the movies like we were talking about, like Top Gun being a great like cinema experience. That's the only movie out of my list out of 10 I watched in cinema. Everything else I've seen at home because they're not coming.
That's true.
They're not
coming.
Even if they're coming to a stream platform, that stream platform is not taking the effort out to be like, okay, let's put it in theaters for a week or a month and then bring it to streaming. No, they're just like dumping it on streaming.
Movies are dumped.
Banshees of Inisherin, direct to Hotstar.
Athena, played in Venice. Netflix, forgotten.
Yeah, everything everywhere. Like I waited months for it to come. Like it eventually came to cinemas, but I had seen it like 3 months before that.
And yeah, but like After Sun is coming, I think a week after we're gonna post this, which is good.
Yeah, but directly to movie, not in theaters.
Directly to movie. Yeah. So here's my thing, right? People, and I was thought of this while watching Navalny. You can produce whatever movie, you can get funding here and there, so you can probably make whatever movie you want to. But the real indicator of where we are as a culture is if that movie finds distribution.
Yeah.
Right, for whatever reason, for political reasons, financial reasons, that's what we need to pay attention to going forward. It's okay if your movie is made. Navalny is going to be made, someone's going to pay for it. But then the bigger thing is that someone gave it exhibition, like HBO bought or whatever.
Yeah, right? Like I've been waiting for like All That Breathes, right, from the documentary in India. Like where is the Indian distribution for that movie? It's an Indian documentary that's being shortlisted for the Oscars. Why is no one distributing it in theaters in India?
For a sad note to end this episode and year on.
That's all for this episode of The Long Take. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram at The Long Take Pod. You can write to us at thelongtakepod@gmail.com. Please leave us a rating and a review. We love this episode and we will see you next week.